Hello, Parkway family. This is Mrs. Wilkerson here with an overview of RTI, Response to Intervention. This training session will focus on closing the achievement gap for the students we serve at Parkway Elementary. What is RTI? RTI is a campus and district instructional framework that identifies students who have gaps in learning or behavior and immediately provides them with increasingly intense levels of interventions until the gaps are closed. What is the goal of RTI? The goal of an RTI framework is to intervene early when students begin to struggle with learning, to prevent them from falling behind and developing learning difficulties. RTI has these key elements: reliable, valid assessments administered to all students, explicit differentiated instruction for all students, research-based interventions to target specific students' needs, and ongoing professional development to support teachers and administrators. Each element is essential for effective RTI implementation. None can be lacking or missing for RTI to have its intended impact on all students' learning. The intended impact, of course, is to close the achievement gap. Therefore, RTI incorporates preventative efforts such as ongoing assessments with effective reactive efforts such as using data to identify strugglers and to provide the appropriate type and intensity of intervention in order to provide targeted instruction and assessment efforts that will ensure we help all children experience success in school. Implementation of RTI procedures is meant to accomplish three primary goals. The first goal is to identify individuals who may be in need of an intervention identified through observation and measurement. A second goal, foundational to RTI, is the selection and delivery of evidence-based interventions for students identified as needing additional help. The third goal is measuring each student's response to the implementation of such interventions, called progress monitoring, in order to make data-driven decisions about instructional needs, including possible eligibility for special education, as well as decisions regarding modification of the type or intensity of the intervention. Now let's view the video from the Texas Education Agency over RTI.
It's important to have a shared understanding of response to intervention, or RTI. We will be examining RTI from two different aspects. First, as a campus-wide instructional framework, and second, as a method for identifying students with specific learning disabilities. Many educators associate RTI with an instructional framework that targets at-risk students. The National Association of State Directors of Special Education succinctly defines RTI as a framework that prevents learning difficulties by providing high-quality instruction and intervention matched to student needs and using learning rate over time and level of performance to make important educational decisions. In other words, RTI is an instructional framework that uses student assessment data to inform instruction and intervention. Screening and benchmark measures identify students with gaps in learning. These at-risk students immediately receive intervention instruction that is designed to close their gaps. Student response to the intervention is measured with frequent progress monitoring. Educators use the progress monitoring data to determine that the intervention is working and to make necessary adjustments in the intervention instruction. Intervention is provided at levels or tiers of increasing intensity matched to student needs. Other terms associated with RTI include three-tier model, multi-tiered intervention model, and instructional decision-making model, or IDM. This slide reiterates the key components of RTI. RTI is a framework built on these components. All students receive high-quality core content area instruction. All students are screened to identify those who are making adequate grade level progress and those who are falling behind and at risk for learning difficulties. At-risk students are provided with immediate, research-based intervention instruction. At-risk students' progress is monitored frequently to ensure the intervention is meeting their needs. Professional development is provided to educators to enhance the instruction and intervention they provide. Visualize RTI as a four-legged stool. The seat is student success. The first leg is Tier 1, or effective core content area instruction that is provided to all students. The second leg is assessment. Screening and benchmark assessments identify students who are at risk. Progress monitoring measures provide data indicating how well students are responding to the intervention. The third leg is research-based intervention matched to student needs. The wider the gaps in student learning, the greater the intensity of the intervention provided. The fourth leg is targeted professional development based on the student data. Without one of these legs, the stool will fall over. Keep in mind, RTI can be used in any content area, most commonly in reading and mathematics. RTI can be used with any grade level. While it is most commonly used in elementary schools, it can work in middle and high schools. This pyramid represents the needs of students on a campus that is implementing an RTI instructional framework well. Keep in mind that most campuses begin implementing RTI with more students needing intervention than those who are performing at benchmark. It takes 2 to 3 years, with many teachers working together, to build this pyramid. Effective Tier 1 core content area instruction is the foundation for a successful RTI framework. Think about your students. At the beginning of the year, how many were performing on grade level? How many needed additional intervention? When an RTI framework is well implemented, fewer students are referred for special education. When students' learning gaps are identified early, intervention quickly closes the gaps before they fall further behind. What percentage of your students are receiving special education instruction? Now that we've discussed RTI as a campus-wide instructional framework that prevents learning disabilities, let's focus on using RTI data in the identification of students with specific learning disabilities. The first section of the resource, Key RTI Concepts and Legislation, highlights relevant passages from federal and state laws. In IDA 2004, the context for RTI is in the determination of the presence of a learning disability. IDEA states that the group of qualified individuals and the parent must consider as part of the evaluation, 1, data that demonstrate that prior to or as part of the referral process, the child was provided appropriate instruction in regular education settings delivered by qualified personnel, and 2, data-based documentation of repeated assessments of achievement at reasonable intervals, reflecting formal assessment of student progress during instruction, which was provided to the child's parents. Does this sound familiar? Appropriate instruction, documentation of repeated assessments, reasonable intervals, student progress? All of this data is required for eligibility determination regardless of the model used for identifying specific learning disabilities. And again, these concepts are all addressed within an RTI framework. IDEA describes RTI data as including documentation of the instructional strategies used and the student data collected. The Federal Register elaborates further. What is important is that the group making the eligibility decision has the information it needs to rule out that the child's underachievement is a result of a lack of appropriate instruction. That could include evidence that the child was provided appropriate instruction either before or as part of the referral process. This statement underscores the importance of ruling out dystotia, a rather common affliction, with a friendly nod to Dr. Jack Fletcher. Special education rosters often include students who did not receive effective instruction, or who had too many absences, or who were from families that moved around a lot. We know the negative impact that lack of access to effective research-based instruction for even 1 year can have on a student's educational career. IDEA directs the decision-making group to use data to rule out dystotia when determining the presence of a learning disability. Stop and consider the students with specific learning disabilities who receive special education instruction at your school. Could some of them have dystotia? We've covered a lot of information.
Thank you so much for joining me in this brief overview of RTI. There will be more training to come over instruction and interventions. I just wanted us to have a common definition of RTI and to get clear what our purpose is. And it's to close the achievement gaps so that all students are able to achieve. Until next time, goodbye.